Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to a really special edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan. After 3 years as my chief of staff and as a trusted, wonderful partner on all things legislative and constituent based, Ryan Kirby is leaving to go on to something else exciting, and I'll tell you more as we chat. But first off, Ryan, welcome to another episode of Kibbitzing with Kagan.
Thank you. It's great to be here for the second time. I think I might be one of the first second-time guests.
I think you are the first, the only, after I think 71 episodes or something. So
yeah.
Earlier in this year of 2021, you and Abby Snyder, my legislative and communications director, joined me for a really fun kibitz. And now it's just you on the hot seat. So let's refresh briefly your background in Carroll County, your family, college Dems, Towson, like just before you got to me. Why don't you just give folks an idea of your background?
Yeah, so as you said, I grew up in Carroll County, and my mom is a nurse. My dad works in technology, and I have two younger brothers, and I went to Towson University. I was heavily involved in all sorts of activities. I worked at the Writing Center. I was an SGA senator. So I used to have the title senator, but it was at school. And I was a campaign manager for Howard County Council Ace Craig Jennings. I was heavily involved in College Democrats. I was the president of the local chapter as well as the statewide federation for a year and a half. So that was a lot of fun. And then that's where I got my feet wet in Democratic politics and what led me to working with you for the last 3 years.
Yay. So it was literally the day after your college graduation that you started working for me, and you started kind of at this level and then just kind of moved your way up really fast.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting session, to say the least. Yes. And it was the last session we had before the craziness of the pandemic.
Yep. Yeah. So that must have been terrifying. You had been learning about politics mostly, but not exclusively, through books and through your education. And all of a sudden you were thrown in the deep end. What made you the most scared?
It's the policy part wasn't always the scary part. It was the constituent parts, because those are people's lives that you're dealing with, and you want to do everything you can to help them. And one of the toughest things is sometimes we can't go and directly fix the problem. We're only trying to connect them with the right people. So sometimes when those connections take longer than normal, you feel like you're beating your head against the wall. But at the end of the day, we always get stuff done in this office.
Indeed. So to be clear to anyone who does not know, we are the GSD office. We could say get stuff done the way Ryan Kirby says it, or we can say get shit done, which is kind of the way I talk about it, because I am all about getting shit done and making a difference, helping people, and making a change in policy where it's needed. So speaking of policy, why don't you talk about some of the issues you've worked on that have been most interesting, whether frustrating or exciting for you?
Yeah, I think one of especially the first year, it's the styrofoam ban that you worked on, becoming the first nation to ban the styrofoam products. Especially I came in your third year, and fortunately that was the year that it passed the legislature. Yep. So that was definitely, being an environmentalist. I'm an Eagle Scout, so environmental issues are something important to me, and that was very exciting to work on in the first year. And then working on election issues over the past couple of years, especially during the 2020 election. And then working with you, what felt like every day we were watching State Board of Elections meeting and local boards, and trying to make sure that everybody had access to the ballot during the pandemic, which was something so unusual.
Yes. Why don't you, talking about COVID, why don't you talk about the 2021 session, which was really challenging and unlike any in history?
Yeah, that was definitely a big challenge. I mean, everybody wanting to be safe. And so there's that aspect of it's, different working every day with a mask and all the hand sanitizer that we're going through and washing our hands. But it was weird not interacting with advocates and constituents in the same way. We're so used to running through the halls and seeing, oh, this person and that person, I need to talk to you about this and that kind of thing. And so that was very different, getting a lot more phone calls and spending a lot more time in front of the screen. So.
Yep. So after Ron Zucker left, you basically took on my key point person on Next Generation 911. What was that like? How was that as a learning curve for you to really become expert on a lot of issues related to public safety?
Yeah, that was definitely a steep learning curve. And it's tough to fill Ron's shoes. Ron did an excellent job that first year. And these are such important issues. I love Senator Riley's comment about this is the most important service that government provides. And it's absolutely true. And working with all of the dedicated public safety sheroes and heroes, and your leadership on the commission for the past 2 years has been incredible to watch, because we know, I mean, even in taking classes, you know that issues tend to not always move forward in commissions and those kinds of things, but you definitely pushed all of these important things forward. So that has been excellent to watch. And I hope moving forward in my career that those are some of the skills that I'll be able to take forward so that hopefully issues don't die in commissions.
Amen to that. Thank you for the kind words. So let's talk about your next steps, because I'm really excited that some of the work that you and I did for a couple of sessions is helping to inspire and guide your next step. So why don't you announce it here?
Yeah, so I'll be joining the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center as their operations specialist. And I'm looking forward to it. I'll be working on some policy, some communications work, working with some of the election officials on the ground, kind of just getting my feet wet and everything ranked choice voting related. So I'm really excited with that, especially as ranked choice voting seems to be growing across the country, and the bills that hopefully we'll be able to reintroduce in Maryland some point in the future.
That's right. So for those who might not have ever heard of ranked choice voting, why don't you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we're all accustomed to the current format where you pick, one candidate for office and you hope, your fingers crossed on election night that they cross the finish line and get the most votes. But in many cases, you have, 6, 7 candidates running for one office, and they could win with 20 some, 30 some % of the vote. With ranked choice voting, you get to select your preferences. And so you're still only casting one ballot. But if your first choice doesn't win, then your vote gets moved to the second choice candidate if they're eliminated and come in last place. And they keep you going with that process until somebody gets a majority. So that it helps prevent wasted votes so that you can vote for the candidate you truly feel will do the job to represent you.
Right. So that was really well explained, but there are people who believe that voters will find it confusing to express their preferences. Why don't you share one of the analogies you use? Because I know I always use Thanksgiving and grandma's pies or something.
Right.
Why don't you choose one?
Yeah, it's interesting. We all make these kind of preferential decisions every day. So for example, when we're going to the grocery store and you really have a hankering for ice cream, and you might have, my personal favorite is strawberry, but if they don't have strawberry, I would want to get chocolate. And if they don't have chocolate, I probably want to get vanilla. And so that's an example of ranked choice voting. So if, strawberry was my first candidate, but they didn't win, they came in last place, they're out of that, then I would go to chocolate. So, I mean, it's very simple as, you just indicate your preferences on a ballot.
Right. Yep. Yep. Why does it not surprise me that those are your ice cream choices? Where I'd be doing the chocolate fudge peanut butter crunch thing as my first choice, but okay.
Well, I've had a Kagan milkshake. I know that would have chocolate and peanut butter in it.
That's right. That's right. So there are a million questions that I want to ask you, and I want you to tell stories, share stories. This has been a pivotal 3 years of your life. Before I go back to that, it occurs to me, do you have any trepidation about going from sort of big fish, small pond at a state level to going to the national level and working for a national organization?
Yeah, it'll definitely be different because they're a fully remote organization. So we're so used to meeting up. I know, we don't meet up as frequently now because of COVID, but we're so used to being in the office, and especially during session every day. So that will definitely be a different type of work environment. My dog, Tippy, will very much appreciate it, but it will definitely be an adjustment, and I look forward to the new challenge.
Yeah, well, they're very lucky to have you. We're really sad that you are leaving. And the day we are recording this, there is just 1 week left in your tenure. And yeah, so what is something, oh no. So here's something I was just going to say, what will you miss most? But the light going off. So it's very good that Annapolis is very green here, and but lights go off in the middle of meetings and in the middle of Zoom. So that was actually perfect timing. So, so talk about what you'll miss most about being in Annapolis.
Being in Annapolis specifically, there are so many great advocates. In politics, sometimes you hear that lobbyist is a really negative term, but there are so many good guy advocates, and they do such important work on elections and not advocating for nonprofits and all the different issues, domestic violence, hunger. There are so many different issues that those are lobbyists, and they're such good people they're working way too hard and not being paid enough and all the good stuff. But they're such important issues and so many great people in Annapolis. So I'll definitely miss working with that.
That's great. So do a fast forward. Where would you like to see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, that's a tough one. I am very passionate about election issues, and I'd love to see, hopefully we'll have some ranked choice voting in a number of different states, and we'll be working to, help local governments and state governments enact that. I know New York City just had their ranked choice voting election, and so hopefully that trend will continue to grow. But where I see myself in a specific position, I don't really know.
Right.
And I'm only 24, so hopefully in 10 years, who knows what the world will bring. I mean, if you had asked me 3 years ago if we'd have a pandemic, there's nobody that could have said that.
Right. Fair enough. So if you had a magic wand and you could be in public office, because I know that's something that that people think about who are in politics, what office and in what jurisdiction? And this is not a campaign announcement. This is not a kickoff. And this could be X years down the road. But why don't you share your thoughts about that?
Oh, that's interesting. So there have definitely been some struggles at the federal level of Congress not really doing anything. So that has definitely been less of an interest, especially when you go to school and a lot of the focus is at the federal level, and especially in the news. I think the state level is kind of where I've really enjoyed. You still have a lot of local impact with the constituent work and just working with counties and local governments. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe I saw myself back in the General Assembly one day.
Love that. Carroll County or Anne Arundel or Montgomery?
Montgomery. It's
Ooh.
funny is whenever I introduce myself to people in the district, I always say I don't have the good fortune to live in District 17 because I live in Glen Burnie. So Anne Arundel, I think is where I'm staying. My wife is a teacher and she's a special educator. And so I think we're probably going to stay in Anne Arundel County.
So to be clear to anyone watching this, Ryan has not seen any of these questions at all. And so this is just, the segues are perfect. So you made a very impulsive decision getting married a couple of years ago. Very impulsive, someone you barely knew. Why don't you talk about your wife, your marriage, and what does Cassie think of politics?
Yeah, so my wife and I have been together for a very long time since we started dating in 8th grade. Where you don't see a lot of middle school relationships last. So November 2010 was, when it all started, and went on to become homecoming and prom king and queens. That was very exciting, getting class couple. Those were very fun and times. And then going through college together, that was always a struggle. You're balancing so many different things. We both went to Towson University, so that was very lucky. And then I proposed the start of my junior year. So planning a wedding while also job hunting, trying to graduate, still also being heavily involved in all of our college activities. So that was exciting. But so to say I jumped into that decision is is definitely very funny. And we just had our second wedding anniversary. We adopted a Shiba Inu dog.
So we think you might make it. That's, I
Yeah.
think, it's still tenuous here, but I think,
Yeah, so it's been an adventure. Always we always talk about how we saw each other grow up because we started dating when we were 13 and 12. So we're approaching almost half of our lives together. So it's kind of crazy.
Amazing. And Cassie in politics, what does she think? How interested is she, and how supportive or curious or disgusted by politics is she?
Yeah, she has definitely grown over the years, a strong interest in it. Originally, I mean, especially being in middle school, didn't really have much of an interest in it, but I was always fascinated by it. And then my interest grew. And then just through conversation, her politics, just engaging in conversation. And we try not to change each other's beliefs, but for the most part, we got pretty lucky that we have some pretty similar ideas.
Yeah.
And she doesn't love watching the news because there's usually a lot of negative stuff, and you hear the other party critiques and those kinds of things, and sometimes it feels more personal because I work in politics. So
who knew?
Yeah.
So I am very lucky that Abby Snyder, my year and a half tenured through a really funny story that I'm not going to take the time to share here, legislative and communications director, has accepted my offer to try to fill your shoes as chief of staff. What advice would you give to Abby?
Oh, the number one rule in the office is always managing the senator's time. And it's always a struggle because especially once we start with Zoom meetings, it's hard not to book back to back to back. And then we don't have time at the end of the day to discuss things. And, there's different bills that are coming up, this constituent issue, what can we do to help them? And, there's so many different things. So managing your time and she has done an excellent job overall. I think you will be in excellent hands with her.
I think that's true. So, but you are a low-key, introverted, pretty shy guy. And you have, for the last year and a half and 3 years with me, had to deal with a lot of estrogen and a lot of energy. How has that been for you?
It's definitely different. I am definitely very introverted. And I think it helps provide a helpful balance in the office. And Abby might be really quick to say one thing and I might bring something back, but sometimes you need that yin and yang. And I think it's been really helpful for you, especially because you get one side and another, right. And then we usually end up somewhere in the middle and always putting out a great product.
True that. There are times where I come back to the office and I'll say like, that's an outreach. You need to draft a letter that says blah, 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 blah. And Abby will draft a letter that'll be just like, and you'll say, and so rather than you suck, you need to stop doing this immediately, Ryan would be more, I'm concerned about this. And
a little more deferential.
The question was where along that spectrum was
yes.
the place to land. And so that worked pretty well, I think. So has there been any vote of mine or bill of mine that you've disagreed with?
Ooh, I don't think we've ever disagreed on something. I know sometimes during an amendment for a bill or something like that, we might be like, ooh, I don't know if we need that. But at the end of the day, it's usually not a big difference. I don't think there's anything I've disagreed with you on. I know something that personally, the public money for public schools is something that we don't tend to do a lot with, but you've been very vocal on that. And that's something, especially being married to a public school teacher, is important to me.
So just clarifying, public money for private schools, private and parochial schools. You said public and public.
So yeah, trying to keep public money. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Is there any question that you have been curious to ask me ever on anything? Ooh. And I'm a little bit of trepidation on this. I have no idea what you might come up with, but I thought, here's a chance.
So here's something interesting. When you first saw my resume and cover letter come through, what were some of your first instincts, not having met me at all?
Great question. So the cover letter was really well written. You had campaign experience in Howard County, so that was a political, tactical piece of it. You were a leader of college Democrats, and so that showed that you could step in, take responsibility, and that your values probably match some of my values. And then, as you referenced, you worked at the Writers Center, and I am a grammar geek and a word nerd, as you know well. And so this guy's going to know how to write a sentence. And so often people who apply they don't know how to write anymore. And the sloppy cover letters you get or essays for a scholarship application or something, it's just frustrating. So I always want somebody who can write well and represent me that way. So those were 3 things that jumped out right away.
Interesting, especially 3 years later.
Yeah. And they all 3 are really valid. Oh my God, the lights again. You need to move around more. I think you need
I
to
know.
be dancing while we're talking. That's crazy. Uh, so a couple more things and then we will get to the Fast Five. So I have a long bio, as you know, that's on the website. What isn't on my bio that would surprise people about me? Something that you know, that you've learned, that you've seen. And again, a little nervous about the response here, but let's see what you come up with on this one.
That's interesting, especially the number of times we've reviewed your bio. Huh.
Something
I think
personal or political or anything.
I think sometimes people don't know just how strategic you can be, in the sense of you have such insight that you can't necessarily put into a bio, but all of your experience kind of culminates into that, whether it was in the nonprofit sector or campaigns or serving in public office, that you think of things in such a unique way, that, you know, I never thought of it and Abby's never thought of it that way, but it's almost always right. And it's always fascinating to see what other people say, and then you offer either feedback or criticism or something like that. That's always very helpful.
Thank you. I like that. Thank you very much.
Hmm?
Before we go to Fast Five, is there anything that I didn't ask you about? Anything you want to share as you're getting ready to abandon us?
I think people should focus on the state politics more so than they often do. You know, the federal government tends to dominate the headlines, but some people don't realize the real impact that state and county and municipal government can have on them. And I think paying attention, you know, you ask people who are their state legislators, and many times they don't know. And if you live in a place that has a town, they might not know who their mayor is or their city council. And especially coming fresh off the heels of the Gaithersburg election, you know, that's something that's really important, that those issues will affect every day. That's the pothole that you have to drive through on your way to work or everything, or something like that. So
I like it. I like it. So Ryan Kirby, Chief of Staff, my Chief of Staff for 3 years now, the Fast Five. So I had asked earlier what you'll miss most about Annapolis. First question, what will you miss most about working in our office?
oh, the energy, without a doubt, the energy. There's always such a high level of energy, and especially being a low energy person, I need that to bring it out of me. So I will definitely miss that. There are so many fun memories.
Nice. I like that. What tip would you give to a new staffer in Annapolis, someone just starting off?
Always pay attention to when people are talking, and that's in a hearing, that's when they're talking to you about an advocacy issue, because sometimes we tend to talk through each other and not actually listen. And so whether it's an issue you agree on or disagree, it's important to actually listen, not just have it go through your ears, because you might want to raise points and that might end up becoming actual policy, or something like that. So it's always important to actually listen to what's being said.
Oh, so now that you're going to have a little bit more flexible schedule and not be at the office for all hours or be working on projects at all hours, is there a new project or hobby that you think you can envision taking on?
I'm hoping to, especially as things are opening up and everybody's getting their vaccines, get involved in some of the environmental groups in my county, and then potentially exploring my master's program for public policy that I've been interested in doing for a while.
That's great. So Abby and I make fun of you because you are a pretty straight down the line eater. Peanut butter and jelly with no cut, not vertical or diagonal or anything, and grapes. That's lunch many days of the week, actually. And water, of course, don't forget the water. Not a soda drinker, not an alcohol drinker. So what is the most exotic food you've ever tried that you've liked?
Ooh, what is the most exotic food there was something, so I cannot remember for the life of me what it was called, but in middle school, I went to Puerto Rico with my uncle and his family. He's originally from Puerto Rico, and their family made, like his family made so much local food that I had never had before. And I can't remember because it was so long ago, but that was such an eye-opening experience for me that, growing up in Carroll County, there weren't really a lot of multicultural options necessarily available. I really enjoyed that, and just trying so many different things. And I remember my mom she was very proud of me because that was not always something I was known for. So I was really open to trying a lot of things there.
Good for you. And you've tried Greek and Middle Eastern, and I can't remember all the different foods we've
Yeah.
exposed you to. So that's good. So the fifth question, as you know very well, is always about your hidden secret superpower, but you've already answered that on the kibitz that we had with Abby. So I'm going to ask you, as the fifth question, Ryan Kirby, over the last 3 years, how has this job changed you?
Oh, besides from learning almost everything there is to know about politics and solving all world problems, right? Um,
Other than that.
yeah, of course. I think I have learned to think about issues in such a different way. And I think that gets back to some of the strategic thinking that you've mentioned, that I mentioned earlier. And I think just when you approach problems in a different way, you tend to come up with different solutions. And so I think if I look back to 2019 versus how I handle issues today, I think they would be very different and far more efficient, far more creative ideas. So I think that is kind of the culmination of the 3 years of work.
That's super. Thank you. Well, Ryan, I have made it through this kibitz without crying, and but I have loved working with you, partnering with you, collaborating and brainstorming and laughing with you. And I am so grateful for 3 thoughtful, effective years of your life working together to make Maryland a better place. And I am grateful for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you taking an opportunity on the kid fresh out of college to work with you. And we've definitely implemented some really important policies through 911 and the environment and elections. So I appreciate the opportunity to work on so many different issues.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to watch your future, and I know we will stay in touch. So thank you. And here's to a final week of GSD getting shit done, and then to launching you for your next wonderful adventure working on ranked choice voting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.